So welcome, Ashwin, Navin, founder of Samba TV. Let's do a bit the same as we discussed with Bill. Will you tell me all about Samba TV, what you do there, and why it's interesting and different?
Well, best way to think about Samba is we're a TV technology company. We produce massive amounts of data on viewership that includes the shows we watch, the movies we watch, ads that we've been exposed to, even video games that we play. And we want this data to be available to our industry to make better decisions in and around advertising or programming or anything else that might make the viewing experience better for everyone.
Okay, so tell me a little bit just in context with Samba. Who do you work with? How long have you been going? How do I access Samba TV data?
Yeah, great questions. So we're a global data set. Our TV technology is integrated in TV operating systems that are in 24 different brands of television that ship all over the world. So you would see us if you bought a new TV and you're setting it up. One of the steps in the setup process would be to opt in or opt out of Samba. When you opt in, it allows us to understand what's going on in that device. We establish a pseudonymous ID for that device so that we can build a understanding of how it's being used and then, in effect, drive personalization in that device as well. So maybe it's better recommendations, it's more relevant advertising, and certainly the wealth of data is here for the industry to take advantage of as well, to basically understand the viewer at a more granular level.
Okay, so forget the robots, the AI we just talked about, Ashwin. You're already living in my TV.
Perhaps. If you're lucky enough to have one of those 24 brands, maybe we are.
Perfect. Well, I'd feel very lucky to have you in my TV, but let's talk actually a little bit about some of the big industry trends. So obviously, recently, there's been a lot of talk about the lack of transparency in the industry. There's been the strikes, writers, actors. Talk to me a little bit about that.
On the topic of AI, I think that's what you sort of read about when you think about what's going on in Hollywood, which is, it's heartbreaking because the talent, the studios, the streamers, the broadcasters, we're all existentially linked.
Yep.
We all want to work. There is a lot of talk about the impact of AI on that industry, but I think that's kind of just a layer of the issue. I think the underlying issue is about transparency and data. As I think about that, I think the instinct many businesses have had is that we all feel data starved, and we thought digital would unlock entirely new data sets, that we'd be swimming in data, but in fact, that data has become heavily siloed, and it's difficult for people to get their hands on to feel confident in their position, whatever they are, and wherever they are in the value chain. So I guess what I would offer, just as a statement of purpose for Samba, maybe with a question like, Ruth, if you could think of anything that you get the more you give, what would it be?
I'm going to say love. I hate myself, Ashwin, but I'm going to say love.
I love that answer. I think data is love. And I believe that we will be better off as an industry if we're more open with our data and more willing to share it. I think the wealth, the data that you'll get back, the insights you'll get back will be much more profound. And I think that's really what's at the core of this issue, is that everyone's holding onto their data. We're here to say, let's open the data. Let's open it up. Let people benefit from it, because I think it builds better relationships, more trust, more transparency, and I think that brings this industry back to work.
Oh my God, I didn't realize we'd reach love so early on in the TV technology talk. But talk to me then a little bit about that transparency, and particularly what you're doing with creators.
Well, our data is available to all decision makers. We talk a lot about at Advertising Week what we're doing with advertising, but in fact, we work with media companies, and media companies have to make decisions on what to fund, what not to fund. We work with anyone, in that decision-making process, even with, the talent, and so if the talent wants to be able to understand, the reach, the popularity of certain services, certain shows, the benefit, for example, of actually making the cast in certain shows or advertising more diverse. One of the things that we've done and been very careful about is making sure that our data is representative of the whole population.
Okay.
And we're careful about being inclusive in that because we believe our data can be a really important source for people to make better decisions. And if we're not including all the population and their needs and what they'd like to see on screen, I think we'll end up with bad outcomes as it relates to programming. So we're very passionate about making the data accessible and improving the quality of the experience for the consumer.
That makes sense. So it's kind of like anybody using this data has a kind of personal version of their dashboard, whether you're a creator or a business, etc.
100%. We want a level playing field for every step of that creative process all the way through distribution monetization.
Okay, so thinking then about one of the things we always talk about, measurement, currency in the TV space. Tell me a little bit about your views there.
We think of currency in a holistic sense, and I know that the TV industry for its entire existence has had to rely on pretty complex methodology to count how many people watch shows, especially when they come over the air or through cable and now through streaming. I think that problem is going to get solved, and there's some really good innovation happening there. What we represent is a data provider, is a partner, to companies that are creating currencies for television. But I think where the industry needs to focus next, and I think we're going to get there on the reach question, I think we need to focus on what's the impact, of advertising, of programming, and that's where we've been spending most of our resources to really understand. Once you've been exposed to media, what kind of impact is it having in behaviors? What are people more likely to buy? How is it influencing, the brand's investment in advertising to bring people to their products? And so I think that's where, we've got a lot of exciting innovation to come. And I think the future of currency, since you ask, is going to be a combination of not just how many people saw my programming or saw my ad, what effect did that have, in their buying behaviors and their lifestyles?
So that's really interesting. I'd love to understand how you'll go on to measure that. But this feels like it's really focused on outcomes more than anything else. So tell me a little bit about that. How are you planning all this outcome-based measurement?
It's, we do have a wealth of data today. And the presentation we just heard from Snowflake is a really exciting and responsible way for data to be, basically exposed and consumed by decision makers in our industry. An example of that we announced this week was with a credit card data company called Affinity that's got purchase data from 190 million people, that they make available in a privacy compliant way so that we can explore the relationship between what people watch and what they buy.
Interesting.
And from an outcomes perspective, I can think of half a dozen verticals where, if they could better understand that relationship, would really transform their business, whether you're in the retail category or the travel category, anywhere, entertainment, wherever a credit card transaction is really what you're trying to drive people to. If you could have those data sets speak to each other in real time and allow for optimization to take place as a result of that combination, I think it's going to be a huge value unlock for the business and the future of currency.
It feels like we've been trying, well, certainly my entire life in the marketing industry, to really have that true attribution journey that we've never quite managed. It feels like maybe this is one of the ways we could get there.
Certainly for, once we've gotten beyond the question of how many people saw my stuff, how many people saw my ad, what's the impact for, very specific clients, things that have really high stakes, sort of opportunities, that's where we're going.
And because I like real life examples, you mentioned Affinity there. Give me a real life example of something Samba's doing that you feel could move in this direction.
Yeah, so talk about retailers like Sephora, for example. Sephora is a client of ours that, it's a retailer. Everyone knows what Sephora stands for, what it brings to the market. It would like to know the relationship between the ads you see for Sephora, maybe their paid media spots in traditional television, maybe it's in connected television, maybe it's outside, maybe in digital. But how do those combine to get people to a store, and how does that relationship exist for Sephora, and how does it compare to its competitive set? Those are the types of things that we're happy to explore and reveal for the client, so that they can, basically make those optimizations around how they're reaching people, as well as how they drive the outcome.
Which is really interesting, although personally, if you could let Sephora know from me, they need to conduct no advertising whatsoever. They have my money already, and they can have more of it. They only need to come to the front of the stage now, and I'll hand it over. But talk to me about, so you have Sephora, traditional retailer, TV data. What about where that moves into more of the social space, things like TikTok?
Yeah, so the ways that you can build a brand today are so diverse. There's so many ways you can do this. And one thing that we've been excited about doing is, as a company that brings data, stands for data and making that data accessible, we've been able to actually work with some of the biggest media platforms and walled gardens. And so, TikTok is a great example where, there's a massive groundswell of activity and viewership and consumption happening there. To be able to bring to advertisers that are branding on TikTok understanding of, what's the effect of that, and to understand TikTok relative to other ways you can build your brand. Something we've been really proud to do this year. We're doing this. What we found is that TikTok, as you think of it as a streaming video service, turns out that TikTok is a really great way to promote other streaming services as well.
Okay, interesting.
It's had massive impact on the entertainment industry. We were on stage this week here at Advertising Week with TikTok talking about that they're seeing triple-digit lift in consumption for other streaming, for other shows that are promoted on TikTok that you can go, basically watch in, whether it's a Netflix or an Amazon or Disney or one of these other services. Turns out that audience is very interested in media, and promoting a show, launching a new show on TikTok has been a huge source of value for companies like Netflix and their, some of the shows that have become cultural memes in social media.
No, it's super interesting. So let's talk a little bit about, you brought ACR to market, but let's talk a little bit about what the next step is. Maybe you can explain to the audience how you did that and then what the next stage looks like.
Sure. So when we started our company, the term ACR did not exist.
Okay.
In fact, it came, some years later because, there was something magical about the ability for a TV to understand how it was being used, and it required new algorithms and software that we invented. But the main thing I would say is that what we found when we got into this, we were very interested in television because that's where people spent hours a day, billions of people around the world, and there was so little understanding of it. And we thought, wow, we really need to crack the code of how do we understand TV better? And how do we understand its relationship with other platforms, which seem to have a lot more understanding, whether it's in digital or any other environment. And we thought, well, if we could bring TV up to that level and then understand it holistically, that would be a really exciting thing to do. So we invented this technology that would understand basically at a show or even like an ad level, like what is that device being used for? What are people watching? And then married that with other data sets. That's what the industry now calls ACR. Exciting thing for us is that you won't find a TV currency today that doesn't include some form of ACR data. And that's very different than where we started the business over a decade ago.
And do you see, so obviously everyone here, they're talking about AI, how it's going to transform the industry. How does that affect your particular industry?
Well, the interesting thing is you think about like what Amazon's doing with football and YouTube TV, et cetera. Like the viewing experience for some of the biggest broadcast or live events is going to be very different in the coming years. And the way ACR worked is, for most flavors of ACR, you look at what's on the screen and you compare it to what's being monitored maybe on a server somewhere and you try to match it. Say, okay, we know what this show is because it looks like this show over here. Well, when you can actually change the viewing angles of the sport you're watching, and you can maybe be focused on your player or your team or, and the ads that you see are very personalized and addressable, that breaks ACR. ACR is not going to work there because you can't make those comparisons between the device and the. So we're already on to the third generation of this technology. We've been working on this for over a decade, and we're thinking about AI as it relates to its ability to predict, and infer, like, is this programming, even though it may look different, is it the same thing as what we think it looks like over here? And that's where we think AI could be really powerful. Even going to questions we've been asked by our clients is, we had a client yesterday tell us they're going to spend more money on their Formula One sponsorship, putting their logo on the car or on the track, than they will in paid media. And they have no source of insight into how much reach is that giving them? Like how effective is that relative to other forms of advertising? So our AI would be, a great way to understand that investment.
No, it's super interesting, and in many ways, Ashwin, you've ruined one of my side jobs, which was when TV was only through panels. I just lied relentlessly, made up everything, just to be chaotic.
I'm dying to know whose show you pumped up.
And now, unfortunately, you've tracked me down and made it all measurable. So very, very, very angry with you. So with that in mind, tell me what the future looks like. I need to know so I can get ahead of you for the next generation.
Well, our true north is an environment for you, Ruth, for when you sit down to television that you're almost interactionless, able to just sit down after a long day of work and just have whatever you see there, feel extremely personal and relevant to you. Shows that reflect your interests and your attitude at any given time, whether you need to pick me up and something to laugh about, or you really want to get immersed in something with a deep plot line, like we want to be able to bring you more of that and not have the ads feel like anything that you wouldn't want, like things that you care about and would like to know more about. That's our true north.
Okay, perfect. So we're out of time. Is there one thing you'd like to leave the audience with? If they leave the room today, don't lie if you're in a TV panel. You can just use Samba TV to find out the real data. But what's the one thing you want to leave people with?
I think this is a moment when, we shouldn't be comfortable with data that's siloed. We shouldn't be comfortable with just a single data set from one device or one publisher as a source of truth. It's time to bring a level playing field to understand media holistically and demand it. Demand it from every one of your media vendors and make sure that you feel like you're getting the confidence and clarity and transparency that you deserve.
Perfect. Well, yesterday a man said on this stage, and I thought this was the best quote of Advertising Week so far, "No cookies, no problem." But actually, I think "data is love" may have really finished things off. Thank you so much, Ashwin.
Yeah, thank you.